Welcome back to Hot Takes and Deep Dives, and I am here with two of my favorite guests of the past year. It's Damian Bellino and Rodeman. Hi, guys.
Oh, hello, Jess. Thank you for having us back.
Hi, Jess. Thank you.
Now, we did our L Word deep dive together, and it's only natural. The only natural fit for this is to do a deep dive on And Just Like That, aka Sex and the City. Because I'm looking at this through a few different lenses, one of which is, how does this compare to the L Word Generation Q?
Okay, I think it's interesting. I think the one thing Ann and I have talked about that is similar is like the way they are trying to like retcon they're like taking the criticism of the original and they're trying to remedy that by, I think, still clumsily inserting like people of color and other sort of people that check boxes as far as being different than what the original world was, which was both worlds were very white, feminine, and like rich. And I think both shows are trying to like remedy that, but the interest is obviously in the characters that we have 10 or 7 plus years of history with, or I should say seasons, because obviously those shows have been on for much longer than 10 years.
Yeah, I think that's such a good comparison because I honestly didn't know where you were going with this today. So it makes complete sense. And I don't know, I guess at surface value, I would say 3 episodes into And Just Like That, I would say I am enjoying And Just Like That more than I enjoyed the first 3 episodes of Generation Q, but I'm not sure that they're doing a better job.
Well, yeah, Generation Q didn't really get, I mean, are we even saying that it's good? It didn't get like
right.
going really until like season 2. Like, I don't know. But there are some interesting crossovers, which I want to bring up. Before we dive into that, I want to talk about 2 quick things. The first thing, Damian, I have exercised such restraint from texting you all day today. This morning, this is for both of you. This morning at 9:45, I'm walking Piper, my dog. I'm literally we're done with the walk. I'm literally about to re-enter my building. Who do I see on the sidewalk? None other than our father, Michael Patrick King.
Oh,
wow.
It's a sign.
Yeah.
It really is a sign. And also, I have had a feeling, I have said this to multiple people, I really have a lot to say to him. I have questions for him. Like, and I've even said, like, if I can get a hold of him, like on the street somehow, I really manifested this into existence. So picture this. I'm with Piper, like we're done with the walk, and I see him in a mask. I just say, Michael Patrick King. He's like, turns around. He's like, hi. And you're dying. I'm like, hi. Now, also, the backstory is I rewatched the entirety of Sex and the City in the last 7 days.
Oh. Okay,
well,
that's, yeah.
So
well
this
done.
man has been on my mind, and I've had a lot of things to ask him. And I just said, like, I'm a big fan of yours. And he immediately started asking questions about me. Like, he asked me about Piper. He asked me what I do. And so I normally wouldn't lead with this, but I said through a laugh, like, I'm a podcaster. Just like imagine the humiliation by introducing yourself as a podcaster. But he got it, that it was funny because, like, Carrie. Yeah. And he was like, oh, that's so interesting. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to interview you. He gave me his publicist's info. So, like, more to follow if this actually works out. I do have to say, he could not have been nicer.
Okay, that's nice. I have to say that's okay. I like that. I'm glad that he was kind. I decided I had like a chip on my shoulder about him because of how like bad this is.
Yes.
Like, but the original was so good, and also I love the comeback. It's like my favorite show of all time over Sex and the City for sure. So I think that, but also I never watched Two Broke Girls, and like I had seen episodes of it, and I didn't think it was for me. So I say all of that to say that I'm like interested in a conversation with him because I feel like in some ways I'm like, oh, our taste level, it's like our taste is the exact same, and then I'm like, but I'm not sure because you revived Sex and the City, and also you wrote those first 2 movies.
Also, he wrote the first 2 episodes of And Just Like That, and episode 3 did get better, and I looked, I was like, oh, he didn't write it. Maybe he should just stick to directing them.
Interesting. But also they, like, isn't the series the third movie, like, broken? Right? Like, they, like, rewrote stuff, obviously, because they added new characters, but it was the third screenplay.
The death of Big that was the third movie. Like scenes of that leaked online. Like we all knew that if there was going to be a third movie, Big died in it. Like that had leaked years ago. So yeah, what we were watching in And Just Like That is parts. I'm sure I know that he always planned for Big to die in the shower. Like that was in the third movie. So yeah. That happened. I just had Damian. And I have a picture with him. I have proof that this happened, and which I will send to both of you when we're done recording.
I'm so proud of you. That really is. You definitely manifested it in a week's time.
In a week's time, on the day that we're recording this.
You're a witch.
I love it.
Very witchy. The second thing that I want to tell you is, well, Damian, did you tell Anne about our adventure last week?
You know what? I didn't really, actually. I had intention to, and it was like on my list of things to talk about. But no, I never really did. That we went to. I told you I was going to an L Word Christmas show, though.
Yeah.
Davey and I went to Stonewall and watched a live script reading of an L Word Christmas Carol, which was written by my friend Carolyn Bergier, who she co-hosts the Diking Out podcast. It really was a Christmas Carol where they had Bet was really the star, but they had all of the characters, and then they had Dana Fairbanks, Kit, and Jenny Schechter as the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future.
That's so good.
I was so into that.
And Gen Q was its own character. Like all of Gen Q was one individual.
I loved it. I thought it was so funny and like so, yeah. The Gen Q being it's like their own character and like trying to insert themselves into conversation was really fucking funny. And also I was like really into like all the ghosts were like ridiculous. I was really into getting to see. It made me sad. I was excited to see Jenny and Kit again. Dana was never for me. You know, like I like her, but people were obsessed with her.
Whoever played Jenny fucking nailed it with the costuming. There were a few costumes that was like, oh my god, that's like literally what they would be wearing. And some of them were really good impersonators. Like whoever was playing Alice really got the Alice, like the rhythm of how she speaks down. Yeah, anyway,
I concur.
So, okay, so let's get into And Just Like That. I think it would have been stronger if they dropped us in and a lot of these storylines were already in motion. I wish that Miranda and Steve had already split up, were still best friends and co-parenting, and yet she was exploring dating with women. And maybe she doesn't wind up with this Che character. Maybe this is just her first experience like dating a woman, and then maybe she dates other women. That to me would be more compelling than she just the way she's the way we're seeing her get excited about this woman feels super forced and inauthentic to me. Or maybe it's just the way Cynthia Nixon's playing it. I think there's a lot of insanity that's going on.
Completely agree with the insanity. I don't know that I'm sold on like the romance between Che and Miranda as like something that I'm rooting for. Like I was so glad to see Sada Ramirez. I agree. I think it would have been interesting to come in mid relationship. But I honestly have to say, I think the show is playing this incorrectly in terms of like the audience knows that Cynthia Nixon is in a relationship with a woman in real life. And I think that is why we're seeing Miranda in a relationship or like potentially having a meet cute with like a queer non-binary person. And I think there's some version of them thinking that the audience is going to be into that. Whereas I don't know that I believe that Miranda is the character that actually this is the arc. I actually think it would be way more interesting if we saw like Charlotte have that arc. Like for me, I'm just somewhat convinced that Charlotte is the person of those four, besides Samantha, who we'll get to. But like that, it would be more interesting to see Charlotte have this revelation. Instead, they gave her the trans kid storyline. But I just don't know that I agree that this would be the thing that rocked Miranda's character. I don't think that she would be having sex with somebody who's not a man. I think Cynthia Nixon is like, I think Miranda is into men.
I disagree. I mean, yes, she was always into men, but I think if anybody was going to like have the queer storyline or have a late in life queer journey, it would be Miranda. It would never be Charlotte.
I think it would. I think that she would be more open to it in some sense. And like, I would be more interested in watching that happen. I just think that the show is playing on Miranda, like what we know about Cynthia Nixon, and I'm not into it.
Also, they like explored in, I don't know, like season 2, when it's a Miranda like kisses Tig Notaro in an elevator. Like we already did the fact that like because she had short hair and like there was energy that was like not super feminine, that somehow that character was like the gay one. And I feel like we already like dipped our toe into it and then decided like we were not. And I am not like, I'm interested in there being a non-binary character. Like, I'm happy that Sara Ramirez is on the show, but I am not into Che. They are not funny. That stand-up set was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life in the 3rd episode. It was like, that was just like a TED talk about like non-binary identity and not a stand-up show. And like, there's no chemistry there. So like, the idea that this is like rocking Miranda's world seems beyond. It seems silly to me. But I don't know. I'm interested if other people are interested in it, but to me, it is not something that I'm rooting for. It seems a little on the nose to make like the person who's gay or queer bi in real life like should now date a person who's not a man, so that we can check that box.
See, I was all along, before, like right as soon as this was announced, I was very firmly on the train. Miranda has to be gay, and I wanted her to have Cynthia Nixon's like literal life. Like, I want her to be like running for office, like make her the governor of New York. Like, I was very into all of that. However, I find the character of Che to be unbearable.
I thought that Che like looked and seemed terrible throughout the entire show until the 3rd episode. And then when we saw them in the bar, I was like, oh, Che is hot, actually. But I feel like they made them look kind of terrible on stage, at the radio station. And I really thought I didn't get the chemistry until right before the shotgun. And then I was like, okay, I thought Cynthia Nixon, the way she played that was really nice. And then I like felt it. But I think more than anything, it was the way that it was filmed that I was like, oh, okay, I'm into this now.
But what the fuck is wrong with Cynthia Nixon? Like, she's she was always the most like grounded. I always felt that Sarah Jessica Parker and Cynthia Nixon anchored the show in realism and nuance. Like, the show always had a lot of nuance, even with the antics of Charlotte and Samantha. They had the most sort of grounded storylines, and they were, I think, the best actresses on the show. What is Cynthia Nixon doing?
I don't think it's her talent that is, like, I don't think it's her performance. I think it's like literally the material of her being like, can I get a Chianti? And like, and it's like not
Chablis.
Like, it's just, oh, Chablis, thank you. It's just like I think that like I think that on the old series, you're correct that Sarah Jessica Parker and Cynthia Nixon were so good and were giving such grounded performances. I would argue that that Kim Cattrall is maybe, for me, I love Cynthia Nixon, so maybe I would say her, but like Kim Cattrall, I think was giving like an incredible performance and also not being given grounded material. So I think like her job was the hardest. I mean, also Kristen Davis, but she was not giving the best performance. But like they were given such otherworldly things to ground that it was so challenging. And I think Kim Cattrall like sold that so successfully.
Miranda wouldn't be like geeking out over this person. She just wouldn't. And I know this because I literally, as I said, I rewatched the entirety of the show. Miranda was always humiliated. Like, she was always put in sexual situations and then was like pretty much always humiliated. And she always stepped into kind of embarrassing situations. But she was not the doofus. The situations were silly in the old show. Whereas now, like, Miranda is not an alcoholic. Miranda is
so
not
stupid.
fawning over this comic. I just don't get the connection. I don't get the intellectual connection. I don't get the attraction. Also, what is with the overemphasis on weed?
Weed?
On weed. Yeah, the character.
It's shocking.
To me, that's just a
I do think that
turn
is
off.
some people's personality, though, I will say. Like, I think some people's personality is that they, like, love being high. So I think that it, like, again, I think it's just like another thing that like now weed is like legalized. So now more people who are like rich and would be rubbing elbows with these women are doing it or more open about doing it. Like, it's not sort of a thing. I don't know. I just think it is a part of people's personalities that is not interesting to me, but I think that they're just trying to like shove more stuff in.
My guess is that the show is 45 minutes, so it exists in my mind somewhere between the show and the movies in terms of its tone. And Cynthia Nixon is now tasked with playing these three things, which is like she has a deaf husband maybe who now she's an alcoholic. She is, you know, dealing with her own white guilt. She's left her job and is now like reckoning with that in her personal and her professional life. And then she's falling for a queer person. So I guess we're supposed to think that like her values she's reevaluating her values or something. But I think they're giving her too much. And maybe she's like, the movies were insane. So maybe I'm just going to like ramp it up a notch. Like, she's amping everything up, and maybe she's just not in the same show that Sarah Jessica Parker seems to be in right now.
I think that's a great point. Do you think they're going to like have Miranda and Steve split, or do you think that they're going to like open their relationship? Because I feel like that feels very 2021, where like they're going to stay married and like have their life together, but then Miranda's going to date a non-binary person and Steve's going to like fuck Debbie again, and then like maybe that will create antics that will be reminiscent of Sex and the City, even though they're still like partnered because they know the fandom also loves Steve, and like I think that because Carrie's relationship for me has always been such a fucked up thing, like the idea that like she would end up with Big and we're supposed to be like think that's aspirational is beyond. And then Charlotte's is like we said earlier, it's like it's other level. It's not grounded in reality. So the idea that like Miranda is, to me, is aspirational. It's like I don't need to have a husband who's in finance who builds me a closet the size of the apartment I live in currently as a single person. I just want a partner who like gets me and I'm attracted to when I want to fuck, who I can like have a kid with maybe, you know? So that is where my issue is. It's like I don't want to watch Miranda and Steve break up, because to me that is like the most aspirational love story in the scenario.
Throwing a wrench in this to answer your question, and granted, we're recording this we've all seen the first 3 episodes, and so this will be out right after the 4th episode airs. So like, who knows what's going to happen? But a prediction that I have is, and this is kind of based on the trailers, I think that they're going to do the whole opening up the marriage thing with Charlotte and Harry.
Oh,
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What can you like? What evidence do you have that suggests that?
How she's saying, and I could be so off, how she's saying to Harry, "You better bring it," or like you know, when they're going to have the dinner with Nicole Ari Parker and her husband. Yeah. So like I was like, oh, like she's like in a way into this woman. They're gonna swing. I think they're gonna swing.
Oh my God. I hate this show so much. Like, I will watch it all. I will watch it, and I'll probably like watch it again before the next season drops, because I'm sure it'll be 100 more seasons, but I can't handle that. Wow.
See, I could handle that.
Okay. Talk to me about
I can totally handle that. I can't handle Miranda fawning over an addict who like can't live without weed for an elevator ride down from their fucking podcast job. That is gross.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I don't know if I'm being judgmental about it, but the weed thing, like, it's bad enough that I have to walk around the city. You can't walk a block without smelling pot. It's disgusting. The smell is revolting. Maybe I'm being judgmental, but
it doesn't bother me. I know that that's how some people feel, but like that doesn't. It's not a deal breaker for me the way like maybe a cigarette would be. Although I'm not even sure.
Take a gummy. Like, oh, that's the other thing. You just made a good point. Like, we all know cigs. That's cool. Like, it's cool to watch Carrie smoking, and I'm so excited that she's going to start smoking again.
Yeah, we need that. We need that back. It's also funny because I think it makes them feel that much more out of touch that she's like in the elevator with Che and is like horrified by it. I feel like it's supposed to say something about these characters, which I agree with. Like, it doesn't really bother me, but I do find Che so repulsive, and also Bobby Lee, who's playing like the straight cis guy, also on the podcast. Like, I just can't believe that we're supposed to expect that Carrie Bradshaw, that's where she would be at this point in her life. It seems completely wrong.
Oh, do you want to get into the podcast thing? 'Cause I have a lot to say about this.
I'm ready. I'm ready to dip in, but I'm obsessed with the idea that maybe Charlotte is opening her marriage. I
want to fuck Nicole Ari Parker more than anybody else on the show. So
correct.
I think it's so interesting that we have 3 gay people talking right now in this conversation, and we all hate Che.
I feel bad for Sada Ramirez. It's like it's terrible writing. They're giving them really terrible things to do. I don't think it's their fault.
And I want to say, I was obsessed with Callie in Arizona on Grey's Anatomy. Obsessed. First of all, may I say, Arizona, Jessica Capshaw from The L Word when Ben fucked her in the car.
Got finger banged in a car.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. That was when they were really hitting their stride.
That was a good season.
It was a very good season. So yeah, I have loved Sada Ramirez forever. I'm a huge fan, but this character is just insufferable. Like, end of story. All of this is coming from a place of love. If I didn't deeply care about this show, I wouldn't be doing this. I would just say nothing. I wouldn't be watching it. I wouldn't care. Like, the same sort of my stance on The Real Housewives of OC. I don't watch it. Like, I don't care. So I'm not like invested in it. This, I have done nothing but obsess over and just like that since it debuted. You know, this, I would say Sex and the City and The L Word really were the two they're my favorite shows. Maybe it's just as simple as that. They're my two favorite shows of all time, period. And I want it to be good, and I will watch it till the end of time, no matter how bad it is, much like the L Word. But I guess I really expected more from this Sex in the City revival than the L Word. Because here's the difference. Sex in the City always had great moments of brilliance and was always critically acclaimed. Sex in the City is a cultural phenomenon, is known to be great, whereas the L Word was always kind of bad.
Correct.
And I think I also expected more from Michael Patrick King. I feel that after my encounter today, for the past week, I've been telling people that I really thought he lost his mind. And I feel bad about that after my run-in with him today.
Well, hopefully you'll get to talk to him and ask him, like, so you talked about the Origins podcast on this podcast, and then Ann and I both listened to it per your recommendation.
Everyone needs to listen to the Sex and the City Origins podcast.
It's like 3 hours of podcasting. It's very good. But in that, Michael Patrick King talks about the decision that he made to end after 6 seasons for HBO, and that he got Sarah Jessica Parker on board with that idea. And that, like, it was very bittersweet, but then one of the women, I think Kristen Davis, says that they all knew pretty confidently that, like, the movie was going to happen because they all had that in their contract, or it was, like, it was the option. So, like, they knew that there was probably going to be a movie. So I just think about the decision then to revive it. I guess it's all just like a money play, and because the third movie didn't happen, they were like, well, we already have a script that has like the bones of where this could go. It just like to then decide you need to make it so badly, like let's bring it to HBO to make it as a series, and we're gonna work around not having one of the 4 main characters in it. It just is like a little bit surprising. So I would actually love to hear, because I feel like you are good at asking, not like, I don't want to say shady, or like I think that that you find ways to ask people sometimes like kind of sneaky questions wrapped up in like a nice way. And I would like for you to ask him, like, why the fuck did you feel like you needed to revive this shit so badly? Like, you decided to end it the first time, so why bring it back? Like, you could have had like 10 more, you could have had 4 or 5 more seasons on HBO in its original iteration, rather than like making them go to Abu Dhabi and now coming back and fucking introducing us to Che.
So he said, okay, Michael Patrick King said that he ended, and this isn't from the Origins podcast, this is from a different interview. He said he knew he had to end it because if he didn't end it then, the characters would have to change. And yet, here we are 15 years later. I mean, the movies, they didn't change. I mean, okay, Carrie wound up getting married, but yeah, if we're asking the question, like, what is the point of this? I really don't know, other than, I mean, how could they need more money? They have enough money for 3 more lifetimes. Sarah Jessica Parker's got that shoe line. I'm just confused.
She has a book imprint. I really, I don't want to place the blame on her, because I really do. Like you said, I have so much love for the show. I love her. I think she's actually, from most accounts, like a pretty good, like, number 1, though I take issue with how the Kim Cattrall situation was handled. That being said, I think if she had said, I'm not doing it, it wouldn't happen, period.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. This is another thing that I told Damian at the L Word Christmas Carol last week. So this is another reason that I think they should have closed up shop at a certain point. So months ago, I got in touch with Willie Garson to come on the podcast, and he said yes, he would love to do it. And so we were just he's like, but listen, let's wait until it's formally been announced that I'm in the show, and then we can like really talk about Sex and the City openly and blah blah blah. Then I noticed that, so I was like, okay, great, thank you so much. Then they started filming, and I thought, let me just, since I don't know his schedule, let me just wait till, like, we all know when the show stops filming. They always publicize that. I'll just reach out when they stop filming. No one was more surprised than me when it was announced that he died. So that's just interesting, because I did have this correspondence with him. Now, having watched these episodes, and I think they only got him for 3 episodes, I think once he died, maybe they should have like shut down production and be like, there's too much stacked against us. Without Samantha, that's hard enough. To lose Willie Garson, I think, is a huge blow to the show. And in these first 3 episodes, I swear I thought the best parts of these 3 episodes were Stanford and Anthony. I thought they were the 2 bright spots. at this point I'm kind of at a loss.
But I liked the weird, like, not even a runner, like the B or C storyline of Stanford and Charlotte having like a sort of like a one-off, and how that was a running gag from the first couple episodes. And I was like, oh, like that would have been funny if it was sort of like Stanford was like never really in the core group, but you know, as like now that Samantha's gone, it kind of is funny if the idea is that he is inserting himself in more. And it makes me sad that I know that I had heard that they tried to film like something with him prior to, as he was getting sicker, and he told Michael Patrick King, like, I just can't. So I don't know how. They
front loaded all of his scenes as much as they could, and then he had to pull out. That I did love all that stuff with Charlotte. That was like great. That was great because like we've known these characters for so long. It really rang true.
Yeah.
Something that I also loved, the way Anthony reacted to Charlotte, like inquiring about the daughter, that was a perfectly realistic response. The Anthony is your typical Gen X gay who would be like, leave it alone. Just let her be who she is. Just leave it alone. It may not be anything. Just like moving on. That was very realistic as a fellow sort of Gen X, Gen Y gay.
Totally agree. And also it's like that's what I wanted to see of the show, and having all of these very precious making moments where we're talking about like white guilt and pronouns and things that are sort of the moment feels really heavy handed. And like you said, it's like this is the organic way that this character would react to the thing. And that's why I'm really missing Samantha, who would have said maybe not what Anthony said, but would have been like, oh my God, get over it. Your kid is trans. Like let them wear a suit if they want, you know, like, and that is an organic reaction in character. And we're just not seeing a lot of that. So I agree. The third episode felt like we were getting back to some of the crackling fun that the original series had. Totally. And we were out and about in New York City, which is like what hadn't been happening the first two episodes.
Totally. I totally agree with that. And I think that, you know, there was that great joke from one of my favorite shows of the last few years, A Work in Progress on Showtime, about, you know, Abby, the butch queer. Like the line is like, Abby has a new girlfriend, like it's a trans man, like, and it's like it's like these old lesbians stumbling over the words about Abby dating a non-binary person. And I agree that if like Samantha was there, I feel like there would have been a joke that was like not transphobic, but that would have been real. That would have just been like Samantha's fucking a they, or, you know, I don't know, something that would have felt like a real response that would have like. I feel like the three women that are left, Miranda is the most like, to me, reality check, but they've made her into a character that she was not, which is to say like bumbling over her like black professor and talking about her like own like virtue signaling or whatever white savior moments. And it's like, oh my God, of the three of them, I feel like she would be the best of them. And yes. So she's getting this like terrible storyline where she like can't talk to anybody, and like none of it's funny. It's all awkward and cringe.
One other thing about Charlotte's kid, and by the way, I really enjoy, I know a lot of people are like, I don't want to see any of the kids. I don't give a fuck about that Brady. He is an advertisement.
He's disgusting.
He's an advertisement for not having children. Like, makes me not want to have children. But, so I can't stand him. But I am into the dichotomy of her two girls. Like, that's actually really interesting, considering such a big part of her storyline in the original was her fertility issues and her quest to be a mother. Like, this is all very interesting. Why can't the child, first of all, we don't know what this child is going to wind up. We don't know where the story's going. Like, if they're going to be trans, it's like, first of all, can't the kid just be a tomboy and not want to wear a dress? It doesn't mean that they're trans. It doesn't mean that they're whatever. Like, you can be a tomboy. Why does it have to go to this extreme?
I think that tomboy is a little bit antiquated, because the idea of like being able to, young girls and boys being able to do whatever and not having to be labeled as like being like a boy for wanting to play sports or whatever, the way we maybe was when we were younger. So like I do think there's something interesting about the conversation, especially because Charlotte is so like hyper feminine and has like wanted all of these very traditional values for like a straight woman. So I like the idea that if her kid isn't sure what they are, doesn't want to be called baby girl or whatever, that then Charlotte, like, I just think it could have been handled with a little bit of levity, where that Charlotte would have been like overdoing it to the point of like being like, oh my gosh, like my kid is trans, and the kid could just be like, I just don't want you to call me like baby girl, or I don't want to wear dresses. You know, like I am interested in that push and pull, but I think that like the way that Charlotte is reacting feels real. It's just that like the tone all feels a little bit like overwrought.
And I think the Anthony scene was a nice resolve for her. And then, of course, we had to watch her get teary-eyed at Che's show, which was like a step too far. You know, it's just like, it's too many things. I think you're right. It's overwrought. It's just, I feel like what we're seeing the people, the writers in the room and the producers saying like, you must grapple with this. And instead of saying like, let's just have the characters like be in the current world and react the way that they would, instead of having it be some like message. It feels like an episode of the week, you know, like each of these moments feels like we're doing an after school special about like having a trans kid.
There's an agenda to everything. Nothing.
It's the Che agenda. The Che agenda.
Like Sex and the City really did have like subtlety and nuance. Oh, you know what I'm really missing? Carrie writing.
Yeah.
I think losing the voiceover was a huge mistake. Because in rewatching the show, the voiceover actually ties the entire show together.
Absolutely.
It was the voiceover that actually provided context. It gave us information about characters on screen without them having to announce who they are. Whereas now, it's all tell, don't show. The key to television writing is show, don't tell. This show is breaking that exact rule. They are telling everything. A character is walking in and announcing who they are. I don't want to harp on Che anymore. It's like I've already talked too much. But like nobody introduces themselves over and over as I'm a Mexican, non-binary.
Also, like, they're so hateable because they say out loud that they're a stand-up like 45 times an episode. It's like, I literally would hate anyone that said that, period. Forget about if you're non-binary and announcing that. But yeah, I agree. It is completely telling us everything that we don't need to know about these characters. Just let them live in the universe.
Che also reminds me, one of my most disliked characters on the original was Burger. And I remember this from in the day when it was airing. I remember this really chapping my ass. I hated how all of the characters would comment on how Burger was quote unquote funny. He's funny. Miranda would have been like, oh my God, yeah, he's funny. And that is what they're doing with Che. Don't tell us that a character is funny. Just have them be naturally funny.
But at least with the Burger, it was a payoff because we ended up hating him. So like all of that like built up like, oh, he's so great. He's so funny. He's nice. It's like paid off.
By the way, I heard Burger's coming back.
I heard that. I read that somewhere.
Okay, let's talk about the podcast.
Okay.
Do you guys have initial thoughts before I rail into this?
I just think it's unrealistic that Carrie Bradshaw, that's where she would be co-hosting as a third with like a sex podcast, and she still can't talk about sex. It's just not true to form. It's not where she would be in her career. It's not a job she would take. And listening to her like talk about posting on Instagram is embarrassing. She would have an assistant that would be doing her social media. Like none of it tracks, and it just feels pathetic and beneath her. And then to watch her feel like she's inferior in that space also feels incorrect.
She would be hosting her own podcast that actually would have started 5 to 10 years ago. She would have been on the forefront of podcasting after she was like a successful author in the end.
Yeah, like why did they make her like have a XM radio show or have her own podcast where she could like interview people, and then there was like a way to get diverse people in as like to be the guest or her co-host, and it could be called Sex in the City even if the show isn't called that anymore.
Exactly. Her podcast would have been about relationships. Do you know how many relationship experts she could interview? That would have been the key. Have her doing it either in her apartment or in a small studio. She would be interviewing fashion designers. That's how you'd get like key guest stars, like through like fashion designers, relationship experts. And Che, if they wanted to have that character, Che could have been the producer of that podcast and like chiming in the way, you know how like a lot of times like producers will chime in on podcasts.
Yeah, like Perry Gilpin on Frasier. Create entryways for these characters that we're being introduced to like make it feel more organic that they were suddenly in this universe.
And that podcast would have been the voiceover. Like, hello, you're doing an audio thing.
Yes,
we need to see Carrie working. I want to see her writing. And yes, newspapers are dead. Maybe the publishing industry is dead. Have her still write the column and maybe she reads it aloud. That's the intro to the podcast. And then she interviews an expert on that subject matter.
I totally agree with that 100%.
What were each of your reactions to the Chris Noth headline?
About him dying or about his, the rape allegations?
The allegations. The death is old news, baby. That's old news. This is a 24-hour news cycle.
I can't say that I was surprised just based on his general vibe and the fact that he ran the cutting room. It was surprising just, I think, in terms of how similar the two stories were, even though they were like a decade apart. I was like, oh, this is terrible, disgusting, predatory assault. And then people had come forward with that headline that was like 25 years old, where Beverly Johnson accused him of physical abuse like years and years ago. And I thought, oh, that was buried somewhere in the back of my brain that I must have just buried. I had no love for him. Like, I didn't care. Big was not like my person for Carrie. But I do think he was an interesting force in the universe. But I do think, like we were saying, he had to die in order for us to reset. So like, I'm not mad at it. And I don't think it's that surprising, like based on his general vibe.
Yeah, to just give like my 2 cents on like everything related to Big, there would be no show if he did not die. Like he needed to die in order for there to be any story whatsoever. Carrie needs to be single. Aside from that, this was the least surprising headline I have read all year. Yeah, like of course. I mean, it's like horrible, and like those women, like I obviously feel for them. I'm so happy that the three, SJP, Kristen Davis, and Cynthia Nixon put out that statement the other day. Like, that was really great. I do wonder what the conversation is behind the scenes because, number one, SJP is friends with Chris Noth in real life.
They're very close, it seems. Yeah.
I really am curious as to what the conversations are behind the scenes. Number two, I pretty much know for sure that there are going to be flashbacks or there are going to be more scenes of Big. She's going to see like visions of him, flashbacks, he filmed more than just this one thing. So they can't just scrap that. Like they need it for the story. So I'm interested to see that. But other than that, like, yeah, we always knew he was a New Yorker. We always knew that he was kind of an alcoholic and like into coke and like, yeah, like kind of knew that.
A sleaze.
Do we know if this series is being billed as a limited series or is it just being billed as like a series?
There's going to be another season for sure.
Oh, there is. Okay, like I wasn't sure.
It was like Gen Q, where in the initial deal, you will get 2 seasons of this.
Okay.
With an option to pick up more.
I didn't know that. I thought it was like a limited series to like wrap up where the movie was going to end. And then I was like, I bet they're going to they're going to change it from limited series to like regular. But I didn't know that it was already greenlit for a second season. Okay, so based on that, what are they setting up then for Samantha? Like if the idea is that this isn't a 10 or an 8 episode series and they're going to wrap it up and like the idea is that maybe like Anne had said that maybe Samantha will call at the end of the season and like that will be how the show ends, about like the 4 of them getting back together.
Oh,
but if
that would be cute.
But if this is going to be a show that has a second season already in place and potentially more if it's successful, I feel like there's no version of the world where Kim Cattrall is ever coming back to this show. I would be obsessed with it if she did. I feel like the show could potentially become very good, honestly, if they could, because the 4 of them together at brunch is always fun. And like, but like, what is it going to be? What are they setting up for Samantha if not this story to just fizzle out and then keep moving like she never existed?
I think that's what they're going to have to do. I thought all along, like while they were filming this summer, because like was running into them filming constantly. They filmed like all over the city, all over the village. And I want to get to that. Actually, the way they're shooting the city feels very weird to me. But
yes, 100.
Yeah, let's like pick up on that right after this. I just watched an interview with Cynthia Nixon, and the interviewer said it seems like they're leaving the door open for Samantha. Cynthia Nixon responds saying, "Oh, there's no door." Like she made it very clear that there is no door open. Cynthia Nixon was like, "Oh, like I think the door is shut." Like she made it very clear. And I wanted to read, I dug up these here. I want to just read this. Willie Garson tweeted this in 2017 once the 3rd movie was officially canceled, because basically they were all on hold and couldn't do other projects because they were just basically waiting. Like they had like filming dates like lined up. And he wrote, this is in response to Kim Cattrall calling the work environment toxic. Willie Garson tweeted, "Dear fans, because I am, quote, toxic, I'm going to negotiate a contract for 6 months, not come to terms, then say I never wanted to do it anyway." I just enjoy him being a shady queen there. And then this is still on Kim Cattrall's Instagram. This is when her brother died. This is from
February. God, I'm obsessed with this.
This is from 2018. I can't even believe it's still up. Says, my mom, this is from Kim Cattrall. "My mom asked me today, quote, when will that Sarah Jessica Parker, she tags her, when will that at Sarah Jessica Parker, that hypocrite leave you alone? Your continuous reaching out is a painful reminder of how cruel you really were then and now. Let me make this, all caps, very clear, if I haven't already. You are not my family. You are not my friend. So I'm writing to tell you one last time to stop exploiting our tragedy in order to restore your nice girl persona.
I'm on Kim Cattrall's side. I love Sarah Jessica Parker, and I love the show, but I feel like it's.
Why
feel
are
like
you on Kim? What universe
I think
was
the
Kim
idea
Cattrall
that
living in, though?
Well, I think she's maybe delusional, but I think a lot of actors are, and I think that Kristen Davis and Cynthia Nixon were happy to like play second fiddle for like a check. And I think Kim Cattrall was like, I'm almost 60. I want to stop making jokes about like tasting like cum at brunch, or I want to be an EP and get $1 million. And everyone's like, wow, you should be grateful that SJP wanted to do this movie. And I think she was like, okay, I don't want to do it anymore. Like, I don't deny that that's probably truth, but I just think the idea that she's awful and that everybody, like, they all wanted to make a movie and they were mad the movie didn't happen. So I just think that there has to be truth to her. Like, the truth is somewhere in the middle. And I think that she wanted an EP credit and they were like, no. And she wanted more money and they were like, no. Like, SJP will always be the star. And I just think that 12 years in or 15 years later, if we're making a revival series, the idea that like her name could also, that their names could all be above the title, or that like she could be an EP,
they are
like,
all executive producers other than Just Like That.
Well, but this is also because the third movie didn't happen and they all pulled out. I mean, you know what I mean? And she pulled out. So like maybe she could have gotten some of the stuff that she wanted, but it feels like maybe that's also a response to her, like to be like an FU. Like the whole, even writing her out to be like, Samantha wanted me, like thought of me as an ATM, felt like it was a rib at her to be like, fuck off.
It didn't make sense. The writing out of Samantha that they had a falling out. They should have just left it. They shouldn't have been so specific. If they just been like, we had a falling out, we're trying to patch it up, we're trying to get in touch with her. The excuse that they gave of how she didn't want her to be doing her PR anymore, or something, that she didn't need a publicist anymore because the book industry was dead, that makes no sense because Samantha was never doing Carrie Bradshaw's PR number one.
She didn't need Carrie's PR to like. That was not like
that
her
was
bread
not her
and
bread
butter.
and butter.
She
like,
did not
put her on the map.
A book company does the author's PR. That's number two. Third of all, Samantha would have been the one to suggest to Carrie, do your own podcast. This is social media. And you know what? You don't have to do anything. We're going to have a social media manager to get you on TikTok. And Carrie be like, what? I don't know what that is. And that would have been Samantha's thing because she's ahead of the curve. As a PR person, she's the one that would have known how the internet was changing so quickly, and Carrie would still be allowed to be her sort of antiquated self. That would have played true if Samantha was in the picture. But to make this up, I felt like they should have like less is more. With giving it too specifics, you were able to poke too many holes in the story.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't do the characters, any of the four characters, a service. You know, I think it really cheapens the idea of their relationship over the last 20 years. And I agree. I think, like what Damian said, I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. I root for Kim Cattrall and I love her. And I do think she's so good and wants to be taken seriously as an actor. And like does the stage and thinks of herself like she is British. And that is how she identifies in the world. And like, I'm obsessed with it. But I do think that it could, again, I'm not putting all the blame on Sarah Jessica Parker because I think that's unfair. But I do think if she had said, put her foot down and said, like, we're all getting $1 million an episode or we're not doing it, it would have happened. If she had said, we're not doing this without Kim Cattrall, it wouldn't have happened. And like, that is her star power. And that's how she could have utilized it. Like, I was into Lisa Kudrow being the one that like, we're negotiating for $1 million an episode for each of us, you motherfuckers. And then she got it because she was the one with the brains to make it happen. And like, it was equal for all of them on Friends. And I do think, again, I'm not into pitting the four women against each other. And again, who knows whether the truth resides. But I do think Sarah Jessica Parker could have stood up and said, like, we don't have a great working relationship, but the truth is this doesn't work as well without the four of us.
What's hilarious is Kim Cattrall is currently filming the new Queer as Folk reboot for Peacock. You
are breaking news to us right now. Okay, this makes so much sense. Wow, she is going to be the Sharon Gless of the new.
My dog just woke up. I Wow.
So wait,
wow.
This is incredible.
So this is so funny. So they're shooting. This is the irony of like my entire fucking life. So Damian, I told you this last week at our L Word Christmas Carol, how I'm actually going to New Orleans for January and February. They are shooting the Queer as Folk reboot in New Orleans. What if I run into Kim Cattrall? I ran into Michael Patrick King today. It could happen.
You gotta get her on the pod, but you gotta
put it in the universe. She'll do it. You know what? She will do it. She is ready to put it all on the microphone, I think, at this point.
If I can't get Willie Garson, you have to give me Kim Cattrall or Michael Patrick King, right?
Yeah.
It's just like the world order. It's how the universe. All right. And let's talk about the way they're shooting the city. Why does it feel like another planet?
It doesn't look like New York at all. First of all, the first thing I screamed at, I'm so glad you brought it up, Jess, because when Miranda steps out of the 116th Street 1 to go to Columbia University, she looks at the bar, and it's Smith's Bar, which, as we all know, resides on 46th and 9th Avenue. Like, this is not the location of Smith's Bar. Why are we thinking that it's up by Columbia? And then Manhattan School of Music, it's like, let's let them go up to 135th Street. Instead, they're filming at the Lyceum in Midtown, and it's clear that it's Midtown. And it's like, these places exist in the real world. I'm hoping that it's COVID related, that they couldn't get it together. But it's like, it would be interesting to see those characters head all the way uptown to go see Lily's concert. It would be great to go see them like head to a weird venue in Brooklyn to see Che's comedy act instead of Webster Hall. Like, all of those things are more interesting. And it just feels like the city isn't actually part of the show. Like, at least we got to see Balthazar in the background of episode 3, where they were at Starbucks, which felt really wrong that they would be waiting
was a
for
very
Carrie.
that was totally weird.
It was like, is this product placement? Like, why are they would never be in a Starbucks.
Interesting.
Such a great point.
The biggest red herring I thought in the very first scene with them, they were clearly having brunch at the Whitney, like the Whitney, the restaurant that's at the Whitney. They leave and they're at Radio City.
Oh my God. Yes, completely right. It's
was
for anybody that lives in New
nuts.
York. That was part of the charm of the original series, is like, I started watching it in real time living in Missouri. I'm at my childhood home right now, so I'm having all of these flashbacks. But like, that was the charm of being like, oh my God, I'm going to go to Magnolia Bakery on 11th Street, and I'm going to like go to Sushi Samba on 7th Avenue South, and like all of these places that held all of this esteem watching it as a young person. Then you could go and see exactly where they were. And this feels, I agree with you, completely not rooted. It doesn't feel like New York City.
So in doing the rewatch, I became so keenly aware of how a lot of this has to do with the lighting. Like the original series, a lot of the scenes took place at night. There was this moody, dark, romantic vibe to it, with like lamps, like no overhead lighting, and the voiceover would kind of give context as to where we are. Like they mentioned Pastis, Cafeteria, Bungalow 8, like that. A lot of that context for locations were in the voiceover. I feel like it's sterile. It's too bright. The show is too bright. And you know what else is afflicted with this? Fucking the L Word Generation Q.
Yes, totally.
The original show had a dark, like there was a darkness to it. Just the way it was shot. And I feel like Gen Q is too bright.
I know. I always thought that was the Canada verse them shooting in California, which I know is ridiculous, but like that's how I've justified it, because it doesn't make any sense to me when it comes to the L Word. But yeah, I agree with both of those critiques, which is like, I don't know. I don't know. I miss seeing them like do things though, and being like, what's that? That's cool. And now I feel like they're doing things that's like, okay, cool. They're going to do things for product placement to sell.
Like remember they would go to like the episode I watched last night was when they go, it's right after Berger breaks up with Carrie on the Post-it, and they go to a club called Bed.
Oh my God, yes.
Yes.
Right?
I remember when that was a thing, yeah.
So a lot of, and when they go to, and then I'm blowing through the series so fast, when she's dating Alexander Petrovsky, who I fucking can't stomach, by the way, and never could, they meet at like this art installation thing, and then, one of their dates, they go to like an art thing where a woman, it's such a typical New York thing. Like
it's like they would just see like a fake Marina Abramovic or something do like she's like sleeping in a bed on.
She's like not eating or drinking for 16 days, and like they go to, that was part of the show. They would always go to like check out new things, where Samantha would be like, oh yeah, I'm doing PR for this thing, and they would show a flyer. Like that even could have been an interesting way to do that fucking stand-up set. Anyway, that was just something I noticed. How do you guys feel about the constant referencing of their ages?
I'm kind of into it, honestly. I mean, I was thinking about how Miranda mentioning in the first episode that she had white hair and questioning that was actually one of the things that felt like that would have been on the original series. That felt true to those characters.
When they're talking about Miranda coloring her hair, like to color her hair or not to color her hair, and then like normally it would go into Carrie's voiceover about like when a woman colors her hair, blah blah blue. Like what is the moral? And I feel like it is a way for them to talk about age without saying we're 55 all the time. Like I think that that's what this show is like is telling us so much stuff rather than the original show didn't need to do that. Like it could talk about things around it. So I'm kind of into the age stuff, but maybe I wish that they would talk more about it in terms of like what they can and cannot do, or what is or isn't acceptable anymore based on their age, rather than just mentioning that the fact that they're fucking 55.
The
Right,
show,
because we had Samantha talking about like her pussy being dry and like menopause conversations, and I feel like I'm into that. Let's bring that for these.
oh,
three.
remember
That's
when
true.
she dyed her bush like bright orange because she found
Yeah.
the gray hair?
Yeah,
I did love Samantha so much.
I know.
yeah.
That having been said, so I'm of two minds about this, about the ages, because it was making me crazy when I was watching the first few episodes. And my initial thought was, you know who's 57 and it's never brought up? And you know who's 50 and it's never brought up? Jennifer Beals is 57. Leisha Haley is 50. It's
Yeah.
never brought up. These people are hotter than ever, and it is never brought up. I love that age is a non-thing on the L Word.
It's a gay show.
Discover your holiday love story with Audible. You can listen to exclusive stories, original podcasts, and more. Enjoy brand new Audible originals like Hold Me Closer, Tony Danzig, and There's Something About Mary, and Christmas Podcast. Keep the fire going with romance favorites like 8 Winter Nights and Nick and Noel's Christmas playlist. 'Tis the season to get cozy. Go to audible.com/holiday romance. Listen now, only from Audible. Audible.com/holiday romance. Two last little fun facts. You guys know that Sandra Bernhard was in talks to be Miranda initially.
Oh no, that's so
Oh,
interesting.
if I knew that, I'd put it somewhere else. Like I don't remember that. That's interesting.
Yeah, she turned it down. Who knows if they really offered it to her, but she says that she turned it down or pulled herself out because the money was so bad. And she also thought, this was based on the pilot script, I think Miranda just had another humiliating thing. She's like, I'm not going to be like eating cake off the street or whatever fucking humiliating thing they had Miranda do, which was a recurring thing. I actually don't think she would have worked as Miranda. Like if she was cast as Miranda and Kim Cattrall was already in place as Samantha, they would have been too old. Like they would have been starting too old. I think like they needed 30 somethings and then Samantha to be the one who was a decade older.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's that. And then also the character of Susan Sharon. Do you guys know about this?
Oh, I know the thing you're gonna. Yeah, I love that character, but I'm assuming this little nugget is about how it's allegedly based on Real Housewife of New York, Dorinda.
Oh yeah, I did read that. I'm very into that. And then I watched that clip of her with Candace Bushnell.
Yes. Yes,
Wait,
yes.
it was a clip of Dorinda with Candace.
Yes.
She's the one. Candace Bushnell is who Dorinda says in The Housewives, how am I doing? Not well, bitch. She's literally talking to Candace Bushnell.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. That's
Okay.
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
So going back, so yeah, they totally know each other. I've actually just confirmed it fully in my mind that this is based on
Okay, great.
Dorinda. So the character of Susan Sharon was somebody who Candace Bushnell wrote about in her original New York Observer column. The character has a very like verbally abusive husband, and Carrie encourages her to leave the husband. She winds up staying with him. That's the storyline. She has an abusive husband and Carrie is like talking to her. In real life, this is based on Dorinda's first husband, Ralph, Hannah's father, who she did wind up divorcing. And so his name is Ralph, and in the show they change his name to Richard, which is ironically Dorinda's second husband's name.
I remember that episode so well because she like tells her to leave him, and then she like shows up at Carrie's house and is like, Carrie, I did it. I left him. And Carrie's and she's like, can I stay here? Carrie's like, and it's like, again, it's another illuminating way in which Carrie is like not always a great is often not a good friend. But yes, I love Susan Sharon. She's so ridiculous. I like, it warms my heart that it may be based on Dorinda.
Can you believe that they got her back? Like, I like that they got back Bitsy Von Lovely. Like, I like that they got these.
I wanted more of that, honestly, at the funeral. I felt like that, again, because it's a comedy, and I think that the first 2 episodes feel less like a comedy. The third one felt more like a comedy.
Yeah.
Like, seeing Natasha again, it's like, I don't need you to... The funeral would have been a way to give you lots of people without having to offer context, because the context is, like, the stakes are pretty high. Her husband died, so if they knew Big or they knew her, there's an excuse for everyone to be there. But, like, the only cameos we really got were Susan Sharon and Bitsy. I would have liked to have seen like Tatum O'Neal there, which is like Anne and I have just been talking about Tatum O'Neal and when is she coming back to Sex and the City.
Who did Tatum O'Neal play?
She's the one that like moved out to the suburbs, right?
No. That's a different friend. She's the one who Carrie won't let her. She's not allowed to wear her shoes into their apartment because of the kids.
Oh,
somebody else takes her shoes.
I just watched that episode last night. Yes.
What is the character? I can't remember what the character's name is, but then Carrie Carrie registers for those shoes for like her wedding to herself. I'm so glad Susan Sharon made the cut for the cameo.
Yeah.
Just to tie up, which were each of your favorite seasons? Let's do like favorite season, and if you have like a key episode or 2 that stands out in your mind.
I think like season 3 and 4 were very good. I do love the New York episode with Daniel Sunyata. I love the Staten Island episode with the firefighter.
John Slattery,
I feel like anytime they're taken out of their like comfort zone in New York City, like you said, to an event that took them there, I loved those. Also, I think this is later on, but like one of my favorite moments of all time where I think you get to see Cynthia Nixon really shine is in her phone call to Steve, where she's like trying to leave the voicemail, but like fumbling over it and then coughs in the middle of it. I was like, she is giving a masterclass. She is so funny and so grounded and so good. So I think those middle seasons were my favorite. 6A and 6B were really tough for me. And I don't treat them as canon, even though I feel like as an older person revisiting it, it makes complete sense to me that Carrie went to Paris. And I like appreciate it in terms of her, but I didn't love the way that the show wrapped itself up. So for me, 6A and 6B, except for Splat, which is I think the best episode of all time, is not like 6A and 6B are not for me.
Damian?
Okay, so a few. I think that seasons 2 and 3 I think are very good, just like collectively. Like I think that those are great seasons. Season 4 is like that super short season, right, where she has the short haircut.
That's 5.
Okay. Oh, I like when they go to Atlantic City though. So that might be 4. I would agree though that Splat is probably my favorite episode. I think it's just so good. It's like so iconic in so many levels. I also like, I actually don't have that many, I don't like that the show ends with Carrie going to Paris, but I think like the collective storyline with her and Petrovsky like makes a lot of sense to me now, much more now as an adult, like a real adult. And also like the conversation that she and Miranda have like post funeral when they go for a walk is like very real. It feels like a real friend being like, why are you leaving? You're going for him. And it's like, why would I stay? Like everyone else is like married or coupled up. So I love that episode in like for many reasons. And obviously like the fall of Kristen Johnson is so brilliant and like all of the great guest stars in it with Candice Bergen and Wallace Shawn. So good. I also love, in season 6 also when Miranda and Steve decide to get married. They're like drinking beer outside, and it's like it just felt like such a real New York thing, and also like the way it made sense for their love story. And then they got married in like a park, and like she wore red, and I felt very happy with the way that felt very true to character. So that's a real chaotic list of my favorite things.
Final question: at the end of the day, when this shit is all wrapped up, will and Just Like That be considered canon or no?
Unfortunately, I think it will because of the death of Big, and that alone, I think, means that it's part of the original universe in ways that the movies are not.
I'm going to counter and say I think no, because I think the absence of Samantha automatically makes it not Sex and the City and therefore not canon.
Correct. I am the judge and jury, and it's not canon. It's not.
I'm glad.
But for me, the movies aren't canon. You know what I mean? And
I love
feel like
the first movie.
I thought the first movie was terrible. It was like 2.5 hours. There was too much plot. She ended up with Big. It was I hated it, and I hated the second movie for different reasons. But I understand why some people love the second.
The second movie is a crime against humanity. I was watching an interview with Michael Patrick King, and he still thinks it's a good movie. The second movie.
Well, you got to bring that up with him.
No, I'm not bringing up the second movie in the interview.
You have to.
No.
Oh my God, when Kelly O'Hara is at the wedding and she like looks at Big and Carrie and she's like, it's just you two about like them not having kids, and I was like, she's like 45. Like nobody meets somebody who's married and is like, oh, you guys are like 45 and 55, you're not having kids. Wow. It was like, it's so stupid. Like, I love the second movie now because it's so stupid. It's so
why
stupid.
Are Anthony and Stanford married? That makes
It's
no
so
fucking sense.
Stupid.
No.
It's also like it's like they teach in comedy clown school. They teach like play to the height of your intelligence. Like don't treat people like your viewers or the audience like they're stupid. And to me, that is like the definition of going against that, because it's like they like undermined every gay and queer fan by just being like, oh, the two gay characters are now married in this universe because why?
It's more fun that they hate each other.
Correct.
Totally.
Yeah.
And also feels kind of more realistic, honestly.
Guys, you're the best. I love
This
you.
is so fun.
Everyone, go listen to You Might Know Her from. Can you tease like some upcoming interviews?
Well, and think about that, because I feel like the thing that we can tell you for sure, if you're listening to this and you like it, like we have a few episodes with women we've talked to Bitsy von Mufflin. We talked to Sakina Joffrey, who actually is in that scene in Splat. She's like the people that it's like her engagement party, and Kristen, she told us how there's a great reveal about how they got Kristen Johnson's leg to fall like out in the frame. We talked to Sarita Chowdhury, who's going to be, I think, Carrie's like real estate agent.
A regular,
season.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have some episodes with people that are tangentially connected to the show.
And did they talk about the show?
We always ask them about Sex and the City.
Okay.
I think, and also Julie Halston told us this great story about being recognized, I think in Turkey, by somebody who was like, Bitsy! Like she has worldwide acclaim. So we were very happy to see her in those first two episodes.
And what do you guys have coming up in the new year?
Well, for L Word fans, you should know that we do have Rachel Shelley in the pipeline. So
I'm
that's
shaking.
The great Rachel Shelley playing Helena, who played Helena in the original series. So we have her in the lineup. And then we have a bunch of other great actors, people from Hacks and people from
Titanic, people from Clue. Basically, the project of the podcast is talking to actresses who don't get the shine that they should. And we do like a full 50-minute interview with them, and then we bullshit the whole time. So lots of Sex in the City, lots of L Word talk on our show.
Perfect. Guys, you're the best. Go follow them. Give your social.
I'm Damian Bellino on all of the things. It's Damian with an A, so Damian Bellino.
And I'm Rodeman on all mediums, RODEMANNE.
Awesome. Guys, you can follow me, Jess X NYC. I have tons of videos of my interviews on Instagram, so give that a follow. Look on YouTube. And thanks, Damian and Ann.
Jess, thank you
Jess.
so much.